Good afternoon. So we are discussing income from other sources. So income from other sources is the last and the residual head of income, and the criteria for classifying any transaction under the head other sources is quite simple. So criteria number one, there should be a taxable income, and criteria number two, such income should not be an exempted income. And criteria number three, which is the defining criteria and the most important criteria, that such transaction should not have been taxed or cannot be taxed under the first four heads. So if these three criteria are met, then you can classify such transaction under the head other sources. And there are a list of other transactions which are specifically taxable under the head other sources, and that's what we have been discussing. So we have discussed so far only one transaction, which is a comprehensive one, income from investments. So when we say income from investments, it is either in the form of dividend or interest. So in today's class, we will discuss some of the other important transactions that are specifically taxable under the head other sources. Probably try to complete the entire list. So the next big transaction, and this is also a very interesting transaction, which is taxable under the head other sources, is gifts. Now you're not new to gifts. Some concepts pertaining to gifts you have already studied in your previous semester in residential status and incidence of tax, and you have so far studied only two transactions. One is gift received from relatives and gift received from non-relatives. So when we say gifts, I would rather say there are three dimensions to this. So you should be aware which transaction comes under which head of income. So in case if you receive gifts from your employer, so employers also offer gifts as an incentive, as an appreciation during various occasions. So it can be gifts pertaining to festival, performance, annual celebration. So if you're receiving gift from your employer, the concept is very simple. It is taxable under the head salaries. The only criteria is that the value of the gift should exceed 5,000. So this is what you have studied in your last semester under the head income from salary. So anything which you receive from your employer, any kind of benefit, whether it is monetary, non-monetary, it is taxable under the head salary. So same rule gets applied to gift also. Gift is a benefit what you're receiving from your employer, and it is taxable under the head salary. The criteria is that the value of the gift should exceed 5,000 rupees in order for us to tax it under the head salaries. Now, second dimension is something what you have studied in this semester, and that is gift received from clients and patients by professionals. So if you're practicing a particular profession, let's say you're a medical practitioner or doctor, lawyer, chartered accountant, or any other professional, and if you receive gift from your customers or clients, that is taxable under the head profession. That's what we did in the first chapter. Now the third is the other categories of gifts, which is taxable under the head other sources. This primarily includes gifts received from relatives and non-relatives. So as far as the gifts taxable under the head other sources are concerned, we are primarily discussing gifts received from non-relatives as well as relatives. Now, in other sources, we cover these three aspects. So first, gift received from relatives. Second aspect, opposite to this, gift received from non-relatives. And there is one third aspect also, which is gift received on special occasions, or we can also term this as gift received on account of specified events. So you should learn the taxability of gifts under these three circumstances. Now, gift received from relative, you're familiar. that it is not taxable. Relative, irrespective of the value of the gift, whether the gift is in cash, kind, does not matter. Gift received from relative is not taxable. It is not taxable anywhere. So it's not that it's not taxable under the head other sources. It's not taxable at all. So irrespective of the value of the gift, irrespective of the nature of the gift, it is not taxable. So that's as simple as that. But what is difficult and challenging here is to know who is a relative. Now, we can't apply the general sense or general definition what we perceive of a relative, but we have to apply the definition of relative, which is as defined under section 56 subsection 2 and clause 6. So we have to apply the definition of a relative, which is as given by the Income Tax Act, and don't assume the definition of relative, which is according to your perception. So who exactly is a relative according to Income Tax Act? So according to Income Tax Act, there are 6 categories in the definition of relative, and this definition is in the form of list, right? So let's identify who are relatives according to Income Tax Act. So first is your spouse, husband or wife, comes under the definition of relatives. So first include your spouse, your partner. Second, brothers and sisters of assessee. So in case if you're assessee, if you're a male, first person defined as assessee is your wife. If you're a female, then it is your husband. Then comes your siblings. That means your brother and sisters. So first, your spouse. Second, your brothers and sisters. Third, again, brothers and sisters of assessee's spouse, which means brother siblings of your husband or wife, right? So generally in Indian context, we use the word brother-in-law or sister-in-law. So your brother and sisters and your brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. So spouse, second, your siblings, brothers and sisters. Third, your spouse siblings, your wives or your husbands, brother and sisters. Again, fourth also is brothers and sisters of either of your parents. So you, for the sake of remembering, I have sequenced this in such a way that you should be able to remember it, right? I would have started from anywhere, but I have started in a sequence so that this sequence helps you to remember. So first is your spouse. Next comes 3 categories of brothers and sisters. Your brothers and sisters, your spouse brothers and sister. Third, again, brothers and sisters of either of your parents. When we say either of the parents of assessee, either of the parents of assessee. So what it means, either of the parents. So your parents comprises of your mother and your father. So it means your mother's brothers and sisters, your father's brothers and sisters, right? And here it does not include brothers and sisters of your wife's parents. No, here brothers and sisters of your either of your parents, right? Brothers and sisters of your mother, brothers and sisters of your fathers, right? So this is the 4th category. Okay, so remember, first spouse, next 3 is brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters of assessee, brothers and sisters of spouse of assessee, brothers and sisters of either of the parents of assessee. Okay, next, the 5th and the 6th category, which comprises of lineal ascendants and descendants of the assessee. Now when we say ascendants, it means where do you originate from? You have originated from your parents and they have originated from their parents. So when we say lineal ascendants, it includes your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents. All the three categories are covered under the word lineal ascendants. Now, when we say descendants, it means the family which you will be making in the future, which means your children, your grandchildren, and your great grandchildren, right? So this is called descendants. So what is category number 5? Lineal ascendants and lineal descendants of the assessee, of the assessee. Fifth category is also, sorry, sixth category is also same, but it is of your spouse. That means any lineal ascendants or descendants of spouse of the assessee. That means your husband or your wife's parents, great grandparents and grandparents, right? Your wife's children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. Simple. So this is what definition of a relative means according to Income Tax Act. So there are 6 major categories which are being identified in this definition. Now, what you have to remember here is niece and nephews are not covered under the definition of relative here. Niece and nephew. So they are not covered because when you look at the definition, it clearly says spouse of the assessee, brothers and sisters of assessee. It does not say children of brothers and sisters of assessee. So children of brothers and sisters is not covered from both the side. From assessee and assessee spouse, brothers and sisters, children are not covered. That's the reason I said niece and nephew. So I mean, from the viewpoint of sociology, right? Definitely they are also relatives. Definitely they are also family members. But from the viewpoint of income tax, they are not. So that's the reason I said the general perception of relative is different from what we have, from what we see in the definition of income tax. So don't apply your general assumption, but rather remember what is defined under Income Tax Act, right? So these are the 6 categories. Let me quickly recall: spouse of the assessee, followed by 3 categories of brothers and sister, brother and sister of assessee, brother and sister of spouse of assessee, brother and sister of either of the parents of the assessee. Followed by this, you have lineal ascendants and descendants of the assessee, lineal ascendants and descendants of the spouse of the assessee. So these 6 categories constitute the definition of relative according to Income Tax Act. So anyways, whatever points I've mentioned here in my lecture, it's all covered in your study material in detail. It is given there, so you don't have to worry that you have missed out on any of the point what I have mentioned, because you can later go and refer your study material given to you. So gifts received from relatives not taxable, irrespective of the value of the gift, irrespective of the nature of the gift. So when we say nature of the gift, I meant whether it is a monetary gift or a non-monetary gift, does not matter. But what about gift received from non-relatives? It is taxable provided the aggregate value of the gifts during the previous year exceeds 50,000. So this sentence is very important, right? So once the value of the gifts exceeds 50,000, what will happen? Will the excess amount be taxable? The answer is no, not the excess amount. The entire amount becomes taxable. Once the aggregate value of the gifts received during the previous year exceeds 50,000 rupees, the entire amount is taxable. So just to give you a demonstration, let's assume I have received the following gifts in the previous year. So one of my friend has a watch, and this watch is worth The market value of this watch is 25,000. Okay. Uh, my nephew has sent me some cash, which is again worth 25,000. I mean, the value of the cash is 25,000. Okay, so what happens here is the total value of the gifts when you add both, it is 50,000, and therefore it is not taxable. But let's say we are playing Secret Santa during Christmas, and one of my colleague in my department gives a watch. And this watch is worth only, let's assume, it's a normal ordinary watch which is worth 500 rupees. What will happen now is entire 50,500 is the total value of gifts what I have received during the previous year. So this is the value of gifts what I have received during the previous year. Now, since the value of the gifts has exceeded 50,000, entire amount is fully taxable. You need to have clarity, because you might think, okay, anything in excess of 50,000 is taxable. No, not in excess. The moment the amount exceeds 50,000 during the previous year, entire 50,000, whatever the amount is above 50,000, the full amount is taxable. So in this case, entire 50,500 rupees gets taxed, because the aggregate value of gifts what I've received during the previous year has exceeded the threshold of 50,000 rupees. So this is the rule what you have to follow when it comes to taxing the gifts from non-relatives. Now the third and the final one is gift received on special occasions. So gift received on special occasion is not taxable. So what are these special occasions? So there are 6 special occasions, and during these special occasions, gifts are not taxable. So these are the 6 special events upon which the gifts are not taxable. So first, on the occasion of marriage of an individual. So any gift received by an individual during his marriage, irrespective of the amount of the gift, irrespective of the nature of the gift, it is fully exempt. So gifts received during marriage, doesn't matter from whom, whether you're relative or a non-relative, any gift received on the occasion of marriage is not taxable. The second one is under will. So your probably your parents or your great grandparents would have made a will and agreement that all my property shall be transferred to my son, my daughter, my grandson or granddaughter. So specifically, if under the will, if you have received something, that is also not taxable. Or inheritance. Sometimes parents and grandparents do not make any will; they die. So in that case, the natural law comes into picture. So obviously, you will be the successor and you will inherit the property. So if you inherit the property, in that case, you're entitled for getting the entire property as a gift, and that is also not taxable. In contemplation of somebody's death, somebody who might not be your relative, right? On account of death, he has specifically mentioned you that you have helped that person during the bad times and he wants to give your property to you. So on account of his death, if you're receiving something, this might be any unknown person also, right? So in that case also, the gift will not be taxable. Any gift from local authorities. So local authorities can be your city corporation, it can be your police department, right? Sometimes police department also keeps uh, rewards on catching certain thieves, dacoits. So if you're helping police department in catching somebody, you get rewarded, right? That is also considered as a gift prize money, and that is also not taxed, right? So all that money what you receive from local authorities as reward gifts will not be taxable. Any gift you receive from a charitable trust, is also not taxable. In fact, your college is also a charitable trust. So if you receive any gift, cash gift, right, that is also not taxable. And any trust or foundation is giving you gift, which is defined under section 10 subsection 23C, will also not be taxed. So these are the 6 specified events during which gifts will not be taxed. So this is about gifts. We also have valuation of gifts. There's a topic called valuation of gifts, but that does not matters much, might not make any big difference. But anyways, I'll just share the file with you and just quickly explain you how the gift needs to be valued. See, certain gifts, if they are in non-monetary, then you should do an assessment of what is the worth of that gift. If somebody is giving you cash gift, then there is no assessment required. You don't have to ascertain the value because the value is already in cash. But what if somebody gives you non-monetary gift? Then how will you know what is the worth of the gift? So this is where this table will help you. In case if it is an immovable property, if you have received immovable property as gift, right? For example, land you have received as a gift. Okay. Then how will you come to know the value of the land? The answer is simple. You have to look at the stamp duty value in the registration papers. So whatever the land value mentioned in the registration paper paid as at the time of paying stamp duty, that will be considered as the value of the gifts. And in case if it is, obviously all these are from non-relatives, because if you receive any of the gifts from relative, it is not taxable. So this is all from non-relative. So if you have received the land as a gift and if the value of the land is more than 50,000, right? If the stamp duty value is more than 50,000, then entire amount is taxable. Third, immovable property received with some consideration. Now, let's assume again you have received an immovable property like a factory, right? You have received a factory, you have received that as a gift, but in order to transfer that factory in your name, right, there is some strike which is going on in the factory, and since now you're taking over the factory, in order to take over the factory, first you have to resolve some disputes for which you are paying money. So let's say in order to resolve the dispute at the factory, I have to end up paying 2 lakh rupees, right? So what happens here is the value of the factory, which is mentioned in the registration papers, from that you will minus the amount of money what you have paid to settle the dispute. So stamp duty minus consideration will be charged as taxable value. So let's say the value of this factory is 10 lakh. But in order to solve the dispute, because unless I don't solve the dispute at the factory, I will not be able to transfer that factory to my name, right? So that's the reason I have spent 2 lakh rupees to solve that dispute. But the value of the factory is 10 lakhs. So value of the factory minus the amount of consideration what I have paid to solve the dispute. So 8 lakh rupees in this example will be taxable value of the gift. Next comes your movable property. So movable property which can be moved from one place to another place. So in case of movable property, we have to go with the fair market value. Fair market value is nothing but your MRP. In simple words, it's a market price. So for immovable property, we consider the value mentioned in the registration papers or the stamp duty value. In case of movable property, we have to consider the fair market value. Simple, right? So if you have received a very expensive watch as a gift from your friend, then the value of the gift will be the MRP price, which is mentioned on the box, which is mentioned in the bill. Simple, right? So if the value of the gift exceeds 50,000, then it is fully taxable. Likewise, what if it is movable property with some consideration? With some consideration. Now assume I visit one of the uh, stores to buy a high definition AMOLED TV, and it so happens that the shop owner is one of my ex-student, and he's saying, sir, I don't want to charge money from you. Please take this as a gift from my side, but just bear the GST and transportation expense. The rest you don't have to pay. Consider this as a gift from me. So what happens in this case, the value of the TV is 1 lakh rupees, but I'm just paying the GST, which is 18,000 rupees, and then the transportation cost, which is 20,000 rupees. So what happens here is the value of the gift will be the MRP, which is mentioned on the TV box, or the its market value, which is 1 lakh, minus the amount what I have paid to acquire this gift. In my case, 18% GST plus 2,000 transportation charges. So 1 lakh minus 20,000. The remaining 80,000 will become the taxable value of the gift. So this is how we do valuation of gifts when it is cash, when it is immovable property, and when it is movable property. Right. So this is about your gifts. Now let's move on to the third item. And the third item is family pension. You people have studied pension in your previous semester under the head income from salaries, but this is slightly different. First of all, when we say family pension, it means the pension given to the dependents of the employees, dependents of the employees. Now, when employee is alive and he is getting pension from his former employer, that is taxable as income from salary. But since employee has died, employee no longer exists, certain pension schemes are designed in such a way that even after employee dies, their dependents, employees' dependents, are also eligible to get that pension. But the issue here is, since the employee has died, from the viewpoint of income tax, there is no employee and employee relationship. On account of death of the employee, the relationship has also gone. But still, employer wants to give the pension to the dependents. So since the employer wants to give pension to the dependents of the employee who is no longer alive, it can't be taxed under the head salary, and therefore it gets taxed under the head other sources. Why family pension cannot be taxed under the head salaries? As I mentioned, one of the important criteria to consider any transaction under the head income from salary is the existence of employee and employee relationship. In the absence of this relationship, any transaction cannot be classified as salary income. So in case of family pension, there is no employee and employee relationship on account of death of employee, and therefore family pension is taxable under the head income from other sources. Now there is a procedure to compute taxable amount of family pension. It is not straight away taxable. For example, let's say the assessee has got 25,000 rupees family pension during the previous year. So entire 25,000 is not taxable. We have to apply certain provisions because family pension is not fully taxable. Certain exemption is available. So what is the exemption amount and what is the taxable amount? In order to figure this out, we have to apply the provisions of section 57, subsection 2A. So when you apply the provisions, then you will come to know what is the taxable amount. So what are the provisions of section 57, subsection 2A? Let's see. So it's a process in which we have to apply two steps. Step number one, take 1/3 of the family pension. Step number two, apply the standard limit of the government notified limit of rupees 15,000. So once you do this, the taxable amount will be actual pension amount minus the least of the above two steps. The amount which you figure out from the above two steps has to be deducted from the actual pension amount. So this is how you get the taxable amount of family pension. So let's move on to some of the other transactions which are taxable under the head other sources. The other transaction includes rental income from letting on hire certain assets. And this is quite tricky because when we say certain assets on hire, that means you're giving things on hire. So if you are into a business in which you're giving things on hire, then it comes in taxable income from business, right? Let's say I'm into business wherein you people can borrow. I mean, you people can rent certain machines. So it can be a motor, it can be a grinding machine, right? So you can rent it, you can take it on rent, or it can be a generator. You can take generator on rent from me. That's my business. My business is giving machines on rent. If that's the case, it is taxable under the head profits and gains from business and profession. But when we say rental income from letting of certain assets on hire, one of the important criteria here is that it should not be your business as such. It should not be your business as such. Let's assume you have a diesel generator at your home. Okay. And you also have inverter. But earlier you used to use generator in case if there was a power cut, you used to use generator. But now what you have done is you have replaced that generator with a very good inverter. So you're no longer using the generator, but it's there in your residence. You have kept it in the storage room. So what happens? One of your neighbor approaches you and says that, can I use this generator? So you say, okay, you can use it, but you have to pay me certain rent for using this generator. So your neighbor agrees because your neighbor is doing catering business and he requires power backup. Unfortunately, he does not have an inverter, neither he has any generator. So whenever there's a power cut, he says, I will take your generator and you take the rent. You take per hour, you take 1,000 rupees. I don't mind. So that's the deal between you and your neighbor. So the rent what you receive from your neighbor for letting this generator on hire can't be taxed under the head income from business because this is not your business. If that is your business, you're into business of letting things on hire. If you're into business of giving generators on hire, then it's okay. It is taxable under the head business. But this is not the case. You are not doing a business of letting things on hire, right? It's your non-routine transaction. Somehow you're doing this. So in that case, the rental income, what you're generating from letting this generator on hire to your neighbor will be taxable under the head income from other sources, because this transaction can't be considered as income from business because you don't have any registered business which is dealing with letting of generator on hire, right? This is just a casual transaction which has happened. So this will be taxable under the head income from other sources. So as simple as that, right? But if you're specifically into this business, then yes, it is under PGBP. But if not, it is under the head other sources. So that's how you differentiate. So let's move on to the other items. Next, you have income from subletting. So this is a very interesting transaction that comes under the head other sources. What it means is that you have taken a house on rent. Of course, you're not the owner of the house. You have taken it on rent and you're staying in that house as a tenant and you're paying the rent to the landlord, to the owner of the house. So when the owner of the house receives that rent from you for letting his house on rent to you, the rental income of the owner is taxable under the head other sources. Sorry, under the head income from house property. But what you have done is you feel that the house is quite big for you and one of your friend who's from other state is also looking for a house to stay, rental house to stay. So you give him an offer that, okay, why don't you stay in my house? I have one room vacant and my house is also furnished. You have all the facilities. So you stay with me and give me a rent of 5,000 rupees. You give me a rent of 5,000 rupees. So what has happened here is, first of all, you're not the owner of the house. You yourself is a tenant who's paying the rent to the owner of the house. But what you have done, you have let out a certain portion of the house on rent to your friend, and you're getting a rental income of 5,000. So the rental income, what you're getting, will be taxable under the head other sources. Now you might ask why the rental income, what I am getting, is not taxable under the head house property. Why it is income from other sources, whereas the rent what I am giving to my owner of the house, that income is taxable under the house, that income is taxable under the head house property. So why not this income also under the head house property? Now the answer to this question is, when you look at the basis of charge of income from house property, it clearly says that in order to consider rental income under the head house property, you should be the owner of the property. If you are not owner of the property, then rental income cannot be considered as income from house property. So therefore, the rental income what you're getting from your friend cannot be considered as income from house property, because you are not the owner of the house. You are also a tenant. A tenant giving the property on rent to somebody else. That's the case here. So therefore, this concept is called subletting. That means you have taken the house on rent and you have given that house to somebody else on rent. So the income what you are generating is called income from subletting, and subletting income is taxable under the head other sources. Right? So that's a simple logic. Next comes your composite rent and ground rent. Now, what do you mean by composite rent? Composite rent means rent charged for the facilities, for the independent facilities attached to a property. Now, what do you mean by independent facilities attached to a property? This can be best explained from the viewpoint of an apartment. So what happens in apartment, if you're staying in an apartment, you will probably be knowing this, that in order to access certain facilities, you have to pay for it. That is not a part of the house property. These are common facilities. For example, if you're staying in an apartment, the society of the apartment or the association might ask you to pay fees if you want to use a swimming pool. So swimming pool is not a property which is attached with your house. It is an independent property, but you can avail the facility. So as the owner of the association of the apartment, right, as the association, I am getting income from swimming pool. So that income is called composite rent. The rent which is generated from the facilities attached to a property, which are independent facilities, is called composite rent. So composite rent cannot be taxed under the head house property. So therefore it is taxable under the head other sources. Similarly, ground rent. So when we say ground rent, there is no property, there is no building. It's only a vacant plot and you're getting rent from the vacant plot. So in the absence of any kind of, see, one of the first criteria of the house property, in order to tax the income from the house property, there are certain criteria. Criteria number one says there has to be a building. But where is a building in case of empty plot? In case of a ground, where is a building? So therefore, ground rent is not taxable under the head house property. Ground rent is also taxable under the head other sources. So both composite rent as well as ground rent gets taxed under the head other sources. Next comes your director's fee. Now director, here when we say director, don't get excited. I'm not referring to a movie director here. When we say director, it means the directors of a company, specifically board of directors. So board of directors are not the employees of the organization. They're not the employees. So board of directors get paid only for attending statutory meetings and other important meetings of the company. So every time a board of directors attends a meeting, he gets a fee, also known as director's sitting fee. So since the director does not have employee and employee relationship with the company, so therefore the fee given to him for every sitting to attend the every meeting, right, is called director's fee. So director fee cannot be taxed under the head salary because director is not the employee of the organization. So therefore director fee is taxable under the head other sources. Likewise, insurance commission. If you become an insurance agent, every time you sell an insurance policy, you get commission. So insurance agent again is not an employee of the organization. So the commission what he gets cannot be taxed under the head salary, and therefore it gets taxed under the head other sources. So there are many freelance insurance agents who sell insurance policies. So every time they sell, they get commission, and that commission gets taxed under the head income from other sources in the absence of employee and employer relationship. Now in the previous semester, you have studied income from agriculture land in India is exempt under section 10 subsection 1. But what if the land is situated outside India? What if you're earning agriculture income from outside India? If you're earning agriculture income from outside India, then it is taxable under the head other sources. Likewise, you also have salaries of ministers. This is quite interesting because ministers, whether it is MPs, MLAs or MLCs, right? The salary which they get, the salary received by the Prime Minister of India, Chief Minister and all other MPs, MLAs and MLCs cannot be taxed under the head income from salary because they do not have employee and employer relationship. Now who's the employer of Narendra Modi, right? Who's the employer of Yediyurappa? Now you might say that I am the employer, I am the voter, I have given vote to them and I have appointed them. The answer is that is not employee and employer relationship. In order to prove that there is an employee and employee relationship, there has to be a master and servant relationship. So even though most of these guys do tell you that they are public servants, but they are not. Technically, they do not have employee and employee relationship. So Prime Minister of India is not an employee of somebody. He represents government. He's not a government employee, but he represents the government. So therefore, salary of all ministers is not taxable under the head salary. It is taxable under the head other sources, right? So that's also quite interesting. Now, some of the other incomes which are taxable under the head other sources can also be royalty. Now, royalty can be taxed under two heads. First, you have also already studied this royalty income being taxed under the head profession. If you're a doctor, if you're a chartered accountant, if you're a lawyer, if you have written any book, you get royalty that is taxable under the head profession. But what if you're a salaried employee and if you have written some book, let's say in my case, right? So I have written book on, my first book was on marketing. My second book was on financial management. My third book was on international business. My fourth book was on income tax. So I have written a couple of books. But my royalty income, what I get from all these books is not taxable under the head profession because I am an employee at St. Joseph's College. So the royalty income, what I get will be taxable under the head other sources. But what if I'm a doctor, right? And I have written a book on various health aspects. And if I get the royalty, then in that case, it is taxable under the head profession. So royalty income can either be taxed under the head profession, provided that you're practicing a profession and you're filing your income under the head profession. If not, then the royalty income will be taxed under the head other sources, right? And of course, the list goes on. So I just want to stop here. Other things, all you have to do is apply the provisions, apply the basis of charge, right? Simple. That's how it is. So let's say you're a waiter in a restaurant, okay, and you get tips from your customers by looking at your excellent service. A customer has given you 100 rupees. So is that taxable under the head salary? Because you're a waiter, you're working for the restaurant, right? You're getting salary from the restaurant. The answer is no, because the tips what you have received as a waiter is not from your employer, it is from the customer. So therefore tips received from customer is taxable, but not under the head salary, but under the head other sources. So like this, I can't keep on listing each and every income, apply the provisions, apply the basis of charge, and finally come to a conclusion. So we will stop our discussion here, and we will have some Q&As. If at all there is any questions you want to ask, please go ahead and ask any questions if you have in your mind. Any questions, please go ahead. Okay, looks like you do not have any question.
Excuse me, sir.